Hey there, Algebra 1. Glad to be with you here again. Start of a new week, a fresh week. You guys are going to notice some changes in my availability. I put that in the bulletin board. Go ahead and check that news article out. Created it myself. So read that, get some updates on when I'm available for you all as students. And we're going to dive right into our lesson here. So talking about simplifying rational expressions, you can see where it is in the textbook here, 11-3, page 690 to 693. That's the lesson we're working with if you want to follow along there. What we're working on today, our goal is to be able to define rational expressions and learn to simplify them. So that's what I'm hoping to teach you today. Okay? Some of you are probably wondering, what is a rational expression? I'm going to help you by defining it. A rational expression is an algebraic fraction whose numerator and denominator are polynomials. So kind of a rough example would be this right here, 3x minus 9 over 4x minus 12. That's kind of the idea of a rational expression. We can simplify these by making sure the numerator and denominator have no common factors. So kind of the lesson all wrapped up into two sentences would be right here. That's what a rational expression is, and this is how we're going to simplify it, making sure they have no common factors. Okay, so here's just a visual example of simplifying rational expressions. This might be helpful if you screenshot it and carry it along with you for the rest of the lesson and for the work that we're going to be doing. Okay, so you see what they do here is we separate it into our factors, our basic factors, and then we can cancel out anything that is common. So we can cancel out the common factors, and that would be simplifying it. Just like you reduce a fraction, pretty much the same way, just a little bit of an added step. Okay, so here's an example of simplifying. I'll show you how we can simplify it, and then we'll work on a few on our own. Okay, so right here we have 16c squared b to the fourth power over 8c to the power of 3 times b. So this is what we're working with here, and all we want to do is simplify it. So our first step is to factor. We want to break it down into its base components, separate it all the way out just so that it is really clear what you've got going on here. I think this is a good way. Maybe you can do it more quickly, and that'd be fine. But for the way that I'm going to show you, I'm going to spread it all out. That way you can see clearly what's happening here. So we break 16 down into its base factors, which it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And you can do that if you just break it down into its base factors. We did this with the factoring, so most of you should be familiar with how to break a number down into its base factors. Okay, prime factors right here, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And then you have c squared, which is the same as saying c times c. And b to the fourth is b times b times b times b. Okay, so that's this numerator broken down and factored. And then the denominator, we're going to do the same thing. So 8 is the same as saying 2 times 2 times 2. C to the power of 3, or cubed, would be c times c times c. And then that's just times b, because it is by itself, okay? After factoring, what do? We want to simplify this. So just like in a fraction where we would reduce it to its lowest terms, that's what we want to do here, okay? So we want to cancel anything that's common in the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so we're going to cancel everything that's common here. So you see I've drawn some lines here that are canceling what's common in the numerator and the denominator. These 3 2's in the numerator and denominator are the same. These 3 2c's in the numerator and denominator, and 1b in the numerator and denominator. So what we have left over is 2b times b times b up in the numerator, and then the denominator is just c. Okay, so if we look here and we simplify it, we've got 2 times b times b times b over c. We now put that back together, and we should have, or I call it combine, 2b cubed over c. Okay? So it is kind of a simple, just step-by-step process, what we need to do. I'm going to show you another example of simplifying. That's going to have to do with factoring. So we are going to incorporate some actual factoring of binomials and trinomials into this process of rational expressions. So here we have 2r plus 18 over r squared plus 8r minus 9. If we're going to simplify it, our first step is to factor. So anything that we can factor and break it down into smaller chunks, that's what we're going to do. So we remember when we factor, we see, okay, 2r and 18, what's common here? We can factor out 2, and that's going to give us 2 parentheses r plus 9, because it's kind of like dividing both of these 2r and positive 18 by 2. And then for factoring this trinomial, r squared plus 8r minus 9, again, remember how we've done factoring. This has only been a couple weeks, so hopefully you haven't forgotten everything that there is to factoring. We see r squared, so our first term is going to be r in both sets of parentheses. Then we've got negative 9, so we figure out what times what equals negative 9. And we kind of break down a couple of factors, what it could be, that when you add them together, you get positive 8. So to make a negative, you got to do a positive times a negative. So it's going to be positive 9 times negative 1. That gives us negative 9. When you add them together, it's like 9 minus 1, which gives you positive 8. Okay, so I show you all that right here. 2 times r plus 9 over r plus 9 times r minus 1. Okay, so we factored this out. And our next step is to cancel. So just like we did before with the numbers and the variables, we want to cancel out everything that is common here. So do you guys see the common stuff yet? Okay, so hopefully you have seen it already. This is what we're doing. We're canceling out that r plus 9. It's common in both the numerator and the denominator. Then we simplify it. We've got 2 over r minus 1, and that's our answer. So 2 over r minus 1. Just that easy. Only takes a couple of steps to simplify it, and that's all I'm asking for at this point. I'm not asking for you to solve for r or anything like that. Let's just simplify, okay? So let me give you guys a chance to simplify this right here. We've got this problem, y squared plus 9y minus 10 over 2y plus 20. Okay, so let me see if you guys can maybe pause the video, see if you can take a spin, try to figure it out, see if you can get this simplified before I show you the steps. Okay, so pause the video and go ahead and try and do that. All right, hopefully you were able to, and if not, that's okay. We're going to go through the steps really quickly here with you. Okay, our first step is to factor. So in the numerator, we're going to have y plus 10 over y minus 1. In the denominator, we have 2 times y plus 10. You see the common that we're going to cancel, right? We're going to cancel out the common factors from the numerator and denominator. Y plus 10 is common, so we cancel that out. And what we have left over is y minus 1 over 2. All right, so there's one more practice that we want to do. It's to recognize opposites. So recognizing opposites, I'll give you an example of what we're looking at right here. So 36 minus t squared over 5t minus 30. And recognizing opposites is something it's a little bit of a skill. You'll have to see it and recognize it. It's not going to come up too often, I promise you. It's just going to be something that's kind of quick I'll probably include 1 on the quiz or test. So it's something that I want you to know about and hopefully recognize, okay? So when we factor, we kind of do the same thing. So it's backwards a little bit. You'll probably recognize that. This isn't normally what we see, right? We normally see our variable squared in the front and then our numbers in the back. So we've got 36 minus t squared. When we factor, we kind of do the same thing, and we know that 36 is 6 squared, so we can break that down. And then to get negative t squared, we know it's a positive t and a negative t. So we do positive t and negative t. So 6 minus t times 6 plus t is the same as saying 36 minus t squared, okay? Then that's over 5 times t minus 6, okay? And we want to, our next step, just like usual, is to cancel, okay? But there's something here I don't know that we can cancel. We can't really cancel 6 minus t and t minus 6. Those are two different things. So in order to adjust that, what we do is we put in a -1 in that numerator, and we say, okay, -1 times 6 minus t is the same thing as saying, 6 minus t is the same thing as saying -1 times t minus 6, okay? So we flip that around. You see we swapped, the t becomes positive, the 6 becomes negative, and we swap those signs because we multiplied it by -1, okay? We were able to do that by multiplying it by -1. We recognize this was the opposite. 6 minus t is the opposite of t minus 6. And to change that so that we can cancel, we multiplied it by -1. That's what I want you to do whenever you recognize an opposite. Swap it around by multiplying by -1. Okay, now we can cancel this. We've got -1, and then we've got t minus 6 cancels with t minus 6. So you're left with -1 times 6 plus t over 5. When we simplify that, we really end up with -6 plus t over 5, okay? So I know it's a few steps. It's something that's maybe a little bit different, but I trust that you'll be able to recognize it and take the step of, okay, we recognize this is an opposite, so what I'm going to do is multiply by -1 and flip this around so that I can cancel, okay? So that's the goal with these recognizing opposites. All right, now I'm going to let you guys try a few, okay? I've got this one right here, n plus 3 over n squared plus 10n plus 21. So I want you to pause, work on that, and get your answer. All right, hopefully you did, and if you have this answer, you did it correctly. 1 over n plus 7. You should have been able to cancel these out after factoring, and you should be able to cancel out an n plus 3, and that leaves you with just 1 and n plus 7, okay? Then, let's see, we've got 12x plus 36 over x squared minus x minus 12, okay? So go ahead and pause, try to answer this one. All right, you should be left with just 12 on the top and just x minus 4 on the bottom. So you should have been able to factor this, factor the 12 out here, leaves you with just x plus 3. And on the bottom, you've got x plus 3, x minus 4, and factor that out, canceling the x plus 3, okay? Last one, 28ab to the third over 16a squared times b. This one's back to the beginning of the lesson. Hopefully you still remember. Separate it out to its prime factors, cancel what's common in the numerator denominator, and go. Alright, so you should have left 7b squared over 4a. Alright, if you have any questions, reach out to me. Love you guys.